Good morning. Hey, before we get into our Bible study, I wanted to mention that we have a couple of special guests here this morning from France. We're being visited by, could you say hi? This is Fabrice and Natasha from France. They're pastors in Draguignan. Okay. All right. Bienvenue aux États-Unis. Welcome to the United States. Let's go. I Google translated that this morning. I practiced, guys. I practiced. Welcome. We just want to extend a warm welcome to you. So happy to have you here. Man, isn't it awesome? We could have friends from around the world serving God's kingdom in a totally different place. Oh, man, I just love that. So welcome, guys. This morning, we're going to be continuing our series on relationships. Remember that we're using this fancy word, covenant. And I think I figured out why almost no one knows about the word covenant, because it's really hard to rhyme with. And so no one writes worship songs about it, right? We all know about God, who's our King, to whom we give every thing, right? But covenant and like revenant or something, I don't know. I can't really. Loving it. Covenant, loving it. Oh man, covenant. Covenant is the Bible word, the Bible term for the kinds of relationship that God designed for us to have with Him and also for us to have with each other. There are different kinds of covenantal, that's the adjective version of covenant, covenantal relationships. Marriage is a covenantal relationship. Family in general, your nuclear family is a covenantal relationship. Our relationship with God, our Father, is a covenantal relationship. And I'm going to talk about at least one other kind of covenant relationship this morning. As I've mentioned before, I am following the outline that is basically given in this book called Unlock the Power of Family. And it occurred to me that I had mentioned, I'm going through this book, I'm studying it like a madman, but we hadn't quite made it easily available to any of you who might want to get your hands on this book. And so we're going to have a table in the foyer, which is the room just behind me, and we're going to have a bunch of these books available to you. I think they're $10. If you don't have $10, please take it, and I will pay for it. I want you to have this in your hands, like at all costs. If I have to throw this into your car as you're leaving church, like I will frisbee this bad boy into your front seat, because it's so incredibly helpful. So I wanted to let you know about that. The second thing is that there's kind of an audio version, not like an audio book necessarily, but it's a teaching series that my father did that has the same name, Unlock the Power of Family. And I've listened to that, I've read the book, and there's a little bit of differences in each of them. So he covers some things in the audio that he does not in the book, but all of it was incredibly helpful for me. And I don't know if any of you are like me. I commute over the hill for my day job, so I've got a lot of driving in my life, a lot of driving. That feels like another covenantal relationship in my life. Me and driving, we're getting to know each other well. So I've got a lot of time to listen to stuff, and I don't know if you've got time to spend in traffic. Well, the audio might be something that you'd be interested in listening to over time, and it's just kind of one of those things that, you might even want to listen to it a couple of times because the topics that are covered are quite deep. So there's this piece of paper that also is going to be back at the table in the foyer that details how to access the audio. And for anybody who's a little bit unfamiliar for how to get there, well, grab this piece of paper and it will tell you how to do that, okay? Well, this morning, we're maybe going to get out of Genesis. I don't know. That's dicey. Genesis, if you have your Bibles with you, open up to Genesis chapter 2. Genesis chapter 2. Genesis, it's the first book of the Bible. Appropriately, it means beginnings, because the book starts in the beginning. So they named the book the very first words that started the book, in the beginning. Genesis chapter 2. Okay. The broad topic I'm going to be speaking about today under the heading of covenant is the second essential element of covenant. The first one we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, the exchange of names. It's all about identity, the uniqueness of who you are, and how your identity is supposed to be established, cultivated within the confines or within the covering of covenant. So we talked about that. The second element of 4 in covenant is what I'm going to call shared history. Shared history. I'm going to spend a little bit of, I'm probably going to spend 2 or 3 weeks on this one because there's a lot to it. And I'm going to dissect that phrase, shared history. We're going to start with the shared part today, and then I'm going to get into the history part in a bit. But this idea of shared history in covenant, a part of it is like the most obvious thing of all time. If you want to have a covenantal relationship, you have to, have a relationship. Like, that's pretty much required. And how can you have a relationship unless there's some kind of sharing? Unless there's some kind of, I'm going to use this word a lot this morning, intimacy, togetherness, closeness. One of the things that defines covenant is a progressive getting close to someone. Over time, you work on this relationship and you get closer and closer and closer together. The amount of intimacy gradually increases over time. This is true of our relationship with God, that the more we get to know him, the more that we are in relationship with him, our closeness to God increases. We share things with him. You might even hear, or maybe you use this phrase in your own life, to share your life with somebody else. I'm sharing my life with someone. It's different than just sharing space, right? I had a roommate back in college for a summer, and I barely knew the guy, and I actually totally forget his name. I can't remember his name. He literally was in my room. Like, our beds were like three feet apart. We shared space, but there was no sharing of life or relationship or history whatsoever. And so we didn't really have a relationship, even though we shared the most intimate space of all, the bathroom. So it's more than just physical proximity, physical closeness. There's something more that our soul longs for. Our soul cries out for this. We want to be close to God. We want to be close to people. So I thought I would go back to, because like here's how my brain works. I'm like, that's interesting. We want to be close to each other. Why? Why is that? Well, that's why I'm back here in Genesis, because I wanted to go back to God's original design, his creation, and study what about that teaches me about my desire to want to be close. So this verse that I want to read is chapter 2, verse 18. And this is before Eve was created. So it was just Adam. Adam was by himself. And God says to Adam, Genesis chapter 2, verse 18, "Then the Lord God said, 'It is not good for the man to be alone.'" It's not good for man to be alone. Okay, so I was thinking about that phrase, and in English, unfortunately, that phrase, "not good," it just doesn't sound that extreme, At least it's not horrible, right? It's kind of like, it's not so great, but it's not the worst thing ever. That's really not what this is intended. So think about the other use of good in Genesis. When does the Bible use good in Genesis? When God created the heavens and the earth, and he was done, what did he say? It is good. He certainly wasn't giving himself like a barely passing grade, like this is satisfactory, But in English, we don't use good very powerfully, right? We're not like, this is good. When God calls creation, he looked at every single element, all of the ecosystem that he had created. He looked at chloroform. He looked at subatomic particle interactions. He looked at eyeballs. He looked at the full spectrum of electromagnetic waves. And he's like, this is good. This is good. The life that I have put into this place is good. Except for one element, he's like, not good. And that is that this human is alone. It's not good. It's so fundamental to our created beings that we would want to connect with other people, not just God, but other people. And again, I was thinking about, why is that? Because God's the author of the story here. He's under no constraint. Jesus wasn't like, hey, Father, remember to put in that desire for people to connect with one another, because you have to do that. No, God can write any story he wants. He could have created Adam without a desire for Adam to connect with any other human being and made Adam live forever, and, that could have been the story that God wrote. But that wasn't the story that God wrote. He wrote into Adam a desire to want to connect with other people. Why, though? Why? I have kind of a heady answer. You ready for it? Ready for your minds to explode a little bit? God's creation is an expression of his nature. And what do we know to be true of God? He is three, but he is one. So God enjoys perfect uniqueness because he is three, and perfect unity, perfect connectedness, perfect intimacy because he is one. So baked into the human psyche, baked into the human soul, is a desire both for wanting to be unique, I am who I am, and a desire to want to connect, to be one with someone else, to be close, to be intimate, to be unified with another, because this is God's nature. And as we celebrate each other, you are who you are, you are who you are, we are literally glorifying the nature of God because of his uniqueness. And as we come together and be close to one another, we also are glorifying God because that's what he does. He is unified. So God creates Eve, puts Adam into a deep sleep, the first example of surgery in all of human history, complete with anesthesia, puts him into a deep sleep. And then Adam wakes up, I don't know if he was really groggy or something. I don't know what drugs God used, but, he's groggy. And then all of a sudden, into view comes woman. And you know what's interesting? I studied this. It's interesting. God didn't take Adam aside and say, okay, listen, this is going to be rough, but I'm going to need you to synchronize with this woman. I'm going to need you to really connect with her, okay? I know, but this is my plan for your life. And all of human population is banking on you right now. You got to do it. You have to connect with her. God didn't need to give Adam a pep talk. Adam immediately says, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. You're different than a giraffe, I notice. And immediately afterwards, it says the big revelation, for this reason, a man will leave everything, everyone, who cares? I can't remember you. To connect, to express unity, and all of those good, deep spiritual things. Unity. Togetherness, oneness. God didn't need to give Adam a pep talk. It was, I'm going to call it intuitive. Okay? All right. I'm having a little bit of fun with it. But I want us to step back for just a second, okay? Just step back. We can learn something about the way that everything was designed in creation before the fall. That there was just an insatiable desire that God put inside of humans to want to meaningfully connect with each other. Now, we know that God's plan wasn't just an Adam and Eve, you guys get to, Adam and Eve together forever, and then that's it. That's the only person you're ever going to need to connect with. No. Eve, in fact, was the means for producing more humans that God had designed for Adam and Eve to connect with, their children, namely. So God made it such that human connection, intimacy, unity, oneness, togetherness, sharedness is desirable. Like, you want it. Just like Adam looked at Eve and he's like, yes, I want this. I want to connect. But what I want to suggest to you is that all of human relationships was designed to be easy and desirable to connect. Now, we live in a world where this desire to connect is under assault. We have been offered so many cheap substitutes for real covenantal relationship. And my concern as a pastor is the more that we accept cheap substitutes for true covenant, we will lose our taste. We will lose a desire for the real godly version. In addiction science, this is a well-documented thing. Someone has an addiction, and even though they know that this drink, this cigarette, this thing I'm looking at online, even though I know this is going to hurt me and hurt the people I love, and even though a good godly thing is in front of me, still I want this destructive thing, even though I know the godly thing is there. It's because when we give ourselves to something as intimate as covenant, when we give ourselves to something that's a substitute, it changes our fundamental desire for the right thing. Many of you know the story in Genesis chapter 3. Adam and Eve didn't do so well. They kind of blew it, for all mankind. There was one rule. And they broke that rule. We know this is the fall of man, or the curse of man. But I want you to read something with me that is baked into God's response to Adam and Eve. When he is describing to them, this is the consequence now. Now that sin has entered into the world, things are so fundamentally broken that what was so easy and full of desire and good things and freedom. I mean, Adam and Eve, and this is the Bible, you guys, they were naked all the time. No problems. You see, because intimacy and vulnerability were not difficult things. It was beautiful. It was wonderful. Then sin entered into the world, and it broke how easy it is for us to align ourselves with God's plan for life. So this is what God says to Adam. So I want you to look in Genesis chapter 3, verse 17. Then to Adam, God said, because you have listened to the voice of your wife and you have eaten from the tree about which I commanded you, saying, you shall not eat from it. Cursed is the ground because of you. And in toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Both thorns and thistles it shall grow for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread until you return to the ground, because from it you were taken, for you are dust, and to dust you shall return. Pretty brutal, right? But if you glance over all of it, it just sounds like, oh my gosh, this is going to be really tough. But actually, God is giving some very good advice. Like, the whole system's broken now, Adam. But listen, I'm going to tell you how you can, again, synchronize yourself, align yourself with my plan of living, and it happens through hard work. So now, the relationships that God intended to be covenantal and that he originally intended to be easy, it's not easy anymore. And therein is one of the lies that I think our society right now is so stinking good at propagating, that it shouldn't be that hard. Oh, and honey, if you were with me, I wouldn't make it as hard as it is with your current spouse. Or why don't you just go online and find satisfaction for that thing that you want that you're not getting? And you can find it immediately. Anything in life that claims you can have the benefit or the outcome of covenant without going on the pathway of covenant, it's just a straight up lie. But bad lies are easy to not believe. Good lies are hard not to believe, because that's what makes them good lies. That's what being deceived is all about. You know, the person who's deceived says, I'm not deceived, by the way. So just think about that one. No, I'm not deceived. Well, that's what you say if you're deceived. So how could you possibly know? We need an external source. That's how you know. Okay. Okay. Let me give you a list of things that I was thinking about that shared history in covenant requires these things. You absolutely cannot now, after the fall of man, you cannot have a shared history with someone unless you have these things. And I want to go through what I believe are lies swirling in our society right now that seem to suggest you don't really have to have these things in order to have the benefits of covenant. Okay? So here's these things. Number one, shared history requires that you have experiences together. You got to be together. Number two, shared history requires effort. You got to have effort. Number three, shared history requires time. Number four, shared history requires vulnerability. And number five, shared history requires forgiveness. You cannot have covenant without forgiveness. You won't last. You won't make it. I want to talk to you about one of the most consistent points of tension in my marriage for the last 9 years. I've been married for 9 years. I've got permission from my wife to share this. I love technology. I think it's awesome. I geek out about it. I think it's cool. I love gadgets. I love wacky ideas. My job is as a consultant in technological things. I just think it's cool. I think atoms are cool. I think electrons are even better, you know? It's like, I love that kind of stuff. It captivates my imagination. It captivates my attention. I love reading about it. I also love reading the news, turns out. I've developed a taste later in life for business-flavored things. So I love reading about the business of technology. So on my phone, on my cell phone, I love reading about cell phones. There's like a beautiful symmetry to that, I think. And I also love playing video games. I love it. I think it's super fun. Like, why would you not want to blow up an alien? You know what I mean? Like, I just think that's awesome. I love strategy. I love strategy games. I love thinking things ahead. So I love exploring those things. It's very satisfying for my mind. It's very satisfying intellectually for me to engage and partake in these things. So there's this time in my first year of marriage where I was sitting at my dinner table and I had my laptop and I was playing a video game online with a buddy of mine. Okay, first year of marriage, my wife was reading a book, and I'm like, this is amazing. She's doing her thing. That's a solo activity. This is a solo activity. That's like covenant, right? Like doing things alone together, right? She's reading a book, and I'm playing, oh my gosh, with my buddy, and it's awesome. And I keep checking over, like, oh, she seems like she's doing good. And then I noticed throughout the course of the day, because I was doing it for a while, the feeling in the room seemed to change from what it originally was. And I thought that she was reading a very emotional book because I noticed that she was crying. But then I had this thing, husbands, you're gonna know what I'm talking about. There's like this moment of like, this feels like something's off. And it feels like there's a strong possibility that I'm the reason for this. But it's not immediately clear to me how or why that is. So I kind of started looking around. What about this could seem off? You know, not even looking at my laptop, like, what, did I not clean something? And then, you know, my wife got up the courage to come, you know, say something and blurted out that she's really not having a good time. And I was thinking, like, this is amazing. Like, my drop-dead gorgeous wife is providing this beautiful scene for me to look at as I'm playing my video games. The mature husband that I was. And we talked about it, and I would give my response like barely a passing grade. Barely a passing grade. This has been a consistent sort of source of tension in our marriage. We've revisited this again and again and again. I like coming home and reading the news. I like coming home and playing a game on my phone. I like coming home and just, and when she has lovingly and appropriately talked to me about that, I'm just stinking defensive. And I got her permission. Here's what I'm thinking, you know? She comes to me, she says, you know, can you not be on your phone? You know, the kids are around and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, woman, what do you want from me? Do you know how hard I work? This is a real thought that I've had, okay? You ready for this? This is just not great. Woman, I have 2 jobs. I work my normal job, and I'm the pastor of a church. I think that I should be able to sit down for a minute and read what I want to read. What do you want me to do? Sit there and stare at you as you do your thing? You're doing your stuff, so I want to do my stuff. Can you see what's wrong about that? Pretty selfish. But I've persisted because I'm a stubborn dude. I should be able to do this. This is how I like to spend my leisure time. You knew this when you married me. Oh my gosh, now we're going down a big time route. You knew this when you married me. I like to play video games. I like to read stuff. I'm a nerd. What do you want from me? I don't want a garden. That's not fun. I don't want to spend my fun time doing not fun things. And I just, I've been very frustrated by it, Very frustrated by it. But I finally understand. I get it. Seriously, like I've got this in the last 3 weeks. It's been 9 years. Pray for my wife, that's a definition of long suffering. I get it. When I'm doing that, I'm not providing an environment of shared history with my family. I am making myself as irrelevant to my kids as if I were not in the room. That's why, and see, my wife, she's so much more in tune with this element of covenant. So her radar's like, we're not sharing enough now. And then I get all defensive, like, back off, I'm tired. And I want all the benefits of covenant. I want my kids to love me. I want my kids to have a great relationship with me. But do you understand? I'm, in that moment, not willing to sweat. Like God told Adam, if you want to sync up with my life plan again, it's going to require effort. And anything that seems to suggest otherwise is a lie. You can self-justify. You can come up with all sorts of reasons that people would even agree with you. You could find a Facebook group of very passionate people who agree, yes, you should be able to do that. But it's not covenant. I get it now. I get it. And I have been accepting a cheap substitute of a version of a relationship that kind of looks like covenant because I'm home. I'm not like these fathers who are not present at all. Or am I? Now, the problem isn't my cell phone. The problem isn't the kind of hobbies that I like to enjoy. That's not the problem. And that's where a lot of Christian, the sky is falling people have gotten it wrong. Delete Facebook, never have a cell phone, especially for kids. Never let them use technology because it's just evil. You know what you're gonna do? Make them irrelevant to the workforce later on in life because you gotta be trained in those things in order to be relevant in this world. The fundamental thing is self-control and selflessness, shared history. Oh goodness, okay. All right. I want to talk about two versions of cheap substitutes of covenantal relationships. I hope I have time for both. We'll see. The first one, I'm going to use a pretty extreme example, and I've scanned the room for ages, and I think we're going to be okay talking about this. But I want to dissect the temptation of pornography in light of the principles of covenant and try to help you understand why pornography is such an egregious violation of covenant. But I want to use it as an analogy to talk to you about how there are other things that are like that, but they might not be quite as obvious as that. I think pretty much everyone would agree that pornography is unhealthy. But why? Well, think about it in terms of this element of covenant, shared history. There is beautiful, wonderful, very pleasurable outcomes of covenant relationship between a man and wife. Pornography offers you a path for what seems like it's going to be kind of like that satisfaction, but without all of that pesky effort. It offers you a shortcut to get to me being satisfied in what I want. When shared history is about us together, and even though us being together in that way does produce pleasure, it is not pleasure that I have alone. It is something that is shared. Even the pleasure is supposed to be shared. So when someone is looking at pornography, basically, what they're doing is the person on the other side of this online whatever, it doesn't even matter who they are. Doesn't matter what their name is. Doesn't matter what their history is. There's zero effort required from me to put in the time and the love and the affection and the cultivating and the vulnerability and the difficulty and the challenge of connecting with this human. It doesn't even matter what their name is. It also offers apparent satisfaction immediately. And that's not how that works. It takes time. It takes time. So imagine a person now who has been living a lifestyle even of partaking in pornographic temptation. That person is being psychologically conditioned to expect that my satisfaction in covenantal relationships, doesn't really matter who you are, should be immediately when I want to be satisfied, I should be able to be satisfied. And it shouldn't require that much work for me. What could possibly go wrong in a marriage for a person who's like, it's just too much work. It's just too tough. Much easier for me to go online and be satisfied the way that I want to, when I want to, how I want to, without any work required on my part. God was super clear. Adam, if you want to sync up with life as it's supposed to be, it requires sweat, bro. It requires a lot of work. And there's going to be a lot of thistles along the way. But man, if you persevere in that and you decide, no, I'm not going to give up on our covenantal relationship. I'm not going to give up on this. And though it has been difficult maybe for you to sync up, for you to align with your spouse, maybe it has been difficult for you to receive what your soul cries out for with respect to intimacy, to not give up and to work at it. And I mean really work at it as if your life depended on it. How many marriages would be saved? Now, of course, this isn't just sexual. Because intimacy, if you think intimacy is just sexual, I remember I was talking with a person one time, and this person was very up in arms about how Christians are very uncomfortable talking about sex. And I used the word intimacy, and she says, "You mean sex?" And I said, "No, I mean intimacy. And if you think intimacy is just about sex, then we got a lot to talk about, because that is not true. There are manifold expressions of intimacy. And between a husband and a wife, yeah, one of them is sex. But if your understanding of intimacy, or the only thing you long for in intimacy is physical intimacy, do you understand your taste is going to be diminished for the real good godly thing? And then anything that doesn't satisfy you in the way that you want to be satisfied, easy to drop. Let me give you another example. In a truly intimate relationship where you are sharing history with one another, each of you takes each other seriously. Like, I value where you're at. I value what you're talking about. I value what you care about. I want to know what you care about. And again, we could imagine a marriage where maybe the wife isn't being taken seriously. She wants to express what's going on in her life. She wants to talk about what's going on in her day. But her husband is so stinking lazy that all he wants to do is read the news about cell phones on his phone. It's an interesting hypothetical. Could we think of an online portal where one could express something and a ton of people would take it seriously immediately? Maybe a little too seriously? Social media is an outlet for fake relationships. I know it's a pretty extreme statement. It's a ruse. It's not real shared history. You're not really developing intimacy. A person can go online and talk about whatever wacky conspiracy theory that they want. And even if people respond by saying, you're wacky, that's totally wrong, guess what? Immediately they've been taken seriously. And if the real cry of their heart is to be noticed, then even negative attention is positive attention. You see that? Again, the problem isn't social media. I'm not trying to rail against Facebook here. The problem is covenant. Covenant is supposed to satisfy that in your heart. It's supposed to be that outlet where you have a place, like a safe place. Think about God. God always wants to hear what you're thinking and how you're feeling. You could talk about your feelings to God, and he'd be like, let's go one step deeper. How do you feel about your feelings about your feelings? Let's just get in there. He is available at any time, at any moment. You could be driving in the car, you could be doing this. It could be 5 minutes, it could be 5 hours. God's like, tell me. Let's commune together. I want to know. Just talk, just lay it all out. No boundaries, it's okay. God can handle it. He knows what you're thinking anyway. That is an expression of intimacy. And we could do that for one another. When we don't, well, then there's a temptation to seek that in a different way. And I see a lot of similarities between the desire to want to be satisfied physically, sexually, and other kinds of desires that covenant relationship is supposed to satisfy, and having them not be satisfied. When I look to others outside of the pathways of covenant, I have just violated covenant. Now, the good news is God is preparing a place where covenant relationships won't be work anymore. It won't be difficult when we're in heaven to align ourselves with the Lord. It won't be difficult to synchronize with the people around us the way that God always intended. But for now, guys, it's a lot of work. And anything that suggests otherwise is a lie. I'm going to share something with you, and this is a very vulnerable thing for me to say, but again, I've got permission from my wife to say this. I have noticed that when I give myself to my hobbies, to, let's talk about this one, my work, I have lost my desire to even be around my family. It's like, I don't even want to be around them. It's just like the prospect of the work. And raising small kids, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. I'm not saying like every moment of every day you should be like, this is awesome. Another poopy diaper? Let's go. Wipe, 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 wipe. Smell it, throw it away, let's go. Covenant, loving it. Nope. Oh, that thing, that plan that we had, yeah, that's not going to work. That thing that we arranged is broken now. It's hard. It's hard work. It's so hard work. But man, that was alarming to me when I'm like, I don't even feel like I want to be around them. It means I've allowed myself to indulge in something that has diminished my good and godly desire. I want to be around my family. Now, I want that. But I realize that. It's conviction. And so I repented. I repented. And I'm like, where's that plow, baby? Let me put my hand to that thing. And I don't want to be the kind of father that my kids are like, does he want to be around me today? I want to be consistent, like God, my heavenly Father, who always wants to be around me. But man, that's a lot of work. But I want to do it. I want to do it. Hard, stinking work. Let's go. Let's not settle for cheap, flimsy substitutes. For the lie that says you can have intimacy without work. No, you can't. And let's provoke one another. Let's stir up one another to love and good works. What do you say we start at home and see where it goes from there? Because man, Jesus said, the world will know you're disciples of mine by the way that you love one another. It doesn't say the way that you love non-believers. That's not what he says. He says the way you love the covenantal people in your life, that's how the world's going to know. There's something different about that. There's something different about it. Yeah. Don't be afraid of conviction. You know, because God he's not trying to reject you. Do you understand? Covenant is about unity. Do you know what the predominant power of sin is? Separation. You get that? That's why sin is so wicked. It's the very opposite of what God intended. God intended for us to come together. Sin tears us apart. But if you're afraid of conviction, if you're afraid of repentance, you will never be free from the trappings of that sin that keeps separating you from the people that you're supposed to be in covenant with. And then you wonder, why is it this hard? Maybe it's because you haven't repented. Maybe it's because you haven't come clean and said, I am indulging. I am allowing the temptation of my flesh to take control so I no longer have self-control. I am under the control of something else, of some other kind of desire. And maybe the way you can recognize it is you don't even want to be in covenant to the people that you know God designed for you to be in covenant with. All right. I don't have time to talk about the other one, so I guess we'll do that next week. But I want to do something. Remember, covenant requires vulnerability. Who's stoked on that? Said no one. Thanks, Adam. That's what I want to do. I just wonder if there's anyone here this morning, and we're not going to pray, we're not going to play the nice music to sway your soul. I want this to be a hard, calculated choice that you make to put your hand to the plow, baby. To reject the temptation of the flesh. To come in the freedom of repentance and say, I have allowed myself to taste something I know is not good. I took the fruit off that tree, and it's not good. But I want to reject that. I repent of that, and I want to put my hand to the plow, and I want to work hard. Maybe you know there's some covenant relationships in your life that need a lot of hard work right now. You know what? Start today. Start right now. This is what I want to do. I want to have some people. I'm going to ask whatever pastors we have here, whatever small group leaders are here this morning, just to go in the side sanctuary, perhaps. Oh, we got coffee over there. Whatever, who cares? It doesn't have to be clean. Get coffee and freedom, you know what I mean? Go in the side sanctuary, and if you want to come to someone and confess to somebody who has spiritual authority so that they can not make you feel bad, I promise you they won't go, what? There's nothing new under the sun, right? they can say, I hear the confession of your mouth. Be free. Be free. Put your hand to that plow. Work hard. And pray for you. And you can confess to the Lord in the presence of someone else. Say, I want to come clean. I need to be done with this. Okay? So pastors, small group leaders, why don't you head over there right now, please? And if that's you, if you want to go get prayer, you want to get something off your chest so that you can work hard and put your hand to the plow, then I want to make this available to you. Okay? Otherwise, I hope I've given you a lot to think about. I know I'm having a lot to think about in my own life. What's God going to convict me of next? I don't know, but you're going to hear about it. Being a pastor is pretty brutal. Not a lot that's private. But yeah, I don't know. There's something sweet about doing it together, though. I hope you feel that way. We can do this together. Your weakness, your vulnerability is my weakness, is my vulnerability. And you're not alone. You won't be made a fool of. But just to know, like, yeah, we all struggle. But let's work hard. Let's get in there. Amen. All right. God bless you, everybody. Go get prayer, go get coffee. And otherwise, we'll see you later. Okay. Bye-bye.